What do we think of Mabfield? Mabfield.
¿Qué es lo que pienso de Mabfield?
What is it, crack? It is your boy D-Murph, and we're finally back with the first episode of the Mabfield podcast after a short hiatus. I'm absolutely buzzing to do this. We're in our new studio in Belfast City Centre, and I've got Pete in the camera who's been shooting all the episodes and editing the forthcoming episodes as well. And yeah, just pretty buzzing to be doing it. This is actually going to be a solo dolo episode, so first time I've actually ever done this for Mabfield. It's been a couple of years since the last episode, which I had always done with a co-host, Jack, who no longer does the podcast. He's moved to England. So I'm going to give this a go. Very inspired by Danny Brown being just a rambler. So yeah, if you're up for this kind of thing, if you enjoy it, if you appreciate what we're trying to do here, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like the video, and just drop a comment, because for an independent podcast like this, it really helps us with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this episode, we're going to just introduce everything again. First up, we're going to be talking about the podcast, what it was before, what it's morphed into, and what we're planning to do this season. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's went on in the last 12 months in Ireland, what artists have been doing bits, making moves, and having an impact on the culture, really. Then at the end, going to answer your questions. We got sent a load on Instagram, so if you're not following us there, TikTok, make sure you're doing that. Every time we're having a solo episode, we're going to be asking questions, and maybe in the future when we've got guests, we can get some questions loaded up for them. So at the time of recording this, we have 5 episodes with 5 amazing guests recorded. So really excited to get them coming through. And yeah, before we get into the episode, just want to shout out Rira, who have kindly sponsored this podcast, and yeah, been a big support and really made it possible. So big shout out to Darren and the rest of the team. And yeah, let's get into it. So for anybody that is familiar with Mabfield, that has heard about it before, you'll know it was an Irish hip hop podcast. Since then, I've went on to interview people like, God knows, we had like Courtesy and all on the podcast, Amma Would Love. But I ended up working at District, being head of content there. And basically, my taste in music just widened, and the scope of what I was into got a lot more broad. So I think that's just going to be reflected in this. Like after years, I got to interview people like JPEG Mafia, Fred Again, Arnold Parks, Gigs, Mahalia. Like basically just opened up what I was into. And I think that's going to be reflected in this. We're not going to be focusing on hip hop in particular. In fact, we're not really going to be a podcast that exclusively focuses on music in Ireland either. Like it makes sense, obviously being in Belfast, that there's going to be a lot of Irish artists focused on this, but I want to make this a podcast that highlights artists that are underrepresented, not being focused on in mainstream media, and tell stories that haven't been told. And I think the first 2 guests especially that we have coming up are going to be reflective of that. For me, it's all about finding the mad stories, the people who are doing incredible things, making incredible music that isn't necessarily being shouted about. That's kind of what I'm passionate about. So yeah, plans for this season is loads of guest episodes, hopefully a few events that were in the works, and just loads of fucking yapping on camera. So yeah, like I guess we can get into the next bit, which is kind of like what has been going on in Ireland in the past 6 to 12 months. I guess like when I was last doing the podcast, when I was last doing Mabfield, everything felt very DIY, and to an extent it still is. Was lots going on, but it felt as if it was an underground scene that wasn't really bursting through. And I think whatever happened with COVID, people were able to professionalize themselves, working indoors on their music, working on content, all that kind of stuff, and able to study the music industry. I've been able to break through a bit more, but also on top of that, you've got just like incredible music coming through. And I think, yeah, if you even look in the last few months, like what I was looking at, mad, like Travis, or now known as Travy Elzzz, getting the first rap #1 on the Irish charts with Doghouse. Like that would have seemed crazy even 3 years ago, and they got the #2 spot the year before with Full Circle. So for that kind of stuff even to be happening on a regular basis, you know, these kind of headlines is crazy. And I think, you know, the whole Gliders outfit is kind of a snapshot of the level that people in Ireland are working on now. You know, that's a self-sufficient group of guys that are putting out incredible video content, putting on mad shows, and creating full bodies of work. Now, I will say that I don't think that Doghouse was my favourite album coming out of Ireland this year, far from it, but I think it's emblematic of just the standard music. It's got some of my favourite singles that have come out of Ireland for sure. The one with Cello and a couple of others. Even the video for what's that one called? What do you call? Have you seen that one, Pete? Travis Nell's Blockbuster. That's it. Blockbuster. Like, I think that as just an example of the level people are on. Crazy. That was, for me, that was a big standout, and seeing people do that in Ireland was crazy, because I think it beat out Ariana Grande as well, which, like, you know, the album sales threshold is far lower in Ireland, but to still do that against a major label artist, insane. So big up to them. Like, that was definitely a standout moment for me in the last 12 months. And definitely one of the biggest albums to come out of here. I think the next thing that kind of just felt like a big thing was Abby Kilbally supporting Coldplay. And, you know, getting to play Croke Park, and it was a bit Brick Nasty as well. That was nuts, but she got brought out on stage with Chris Martin to perform a verse on one of his songs. And I think, you know, having watched her rise as part of Camden Mill Club and doing the DIY thing, and, you know, that's an in-house thing with Moyo producing a lot of that shit, to then sharing a stage with Chris Martin. Like, for better or worse, Coldplay are now one of the biggest acts on the planet. I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the top 10 most streamed artists in the world, for sure. Like, and whatever you think about them, that is pretty insane. And Abby signed to All My Friends, I think that's what it's called. And that was the first label that Lowell Carner was on. I think Koji Radical and a few others. So that's kind of like, I think they've all left now, and she was the first artist to get signed there. So if you're looking for like a reference point for the kind of artists they're signing and what things they're going on to do, and I think if you look at what Abby's doing right now, she's on that trajectory. Not at that point, obviously, but starting to do big things. And doing that with Brick Nasty, fucking sick band, who I was actually lucky to work on their bio for their forthcoming work coming out. I've listened to that EP, and that's insane. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And then looking closer to Belfast, like, I'm from Belfast, and, well, just outside it, but live in Belfast. And Jordan Adetunji, like, most people have probably heard of this by now, but from London, grew up in Belfast for a lot of his life. Having that moment with Killarney, I think when I made the TikTok talking about it, I think I had like 600,000 videos made to that sound. And it felt like it was going turbo at that point. And then he got signed to 300 Entertainment, had Killarney on the remix, is in America doing his first headline show in New York. I didn't think it could get bigger than what it was, but it actually genuinely is in contention for Song of the Summer. Like, I think Kendrick Lamar will probably take that crown. But, you know, in terms of like the sound that everybody was dancing to this summer, like, that's got to be up there. And I think what's amazing about Jordan's story is, to my knowledge, he was signed to RCA before this, had that Rock and Rave EP, which was class, quite experimental, and showed that he was willing to experiment and to go different places. I think he got dropped from them, if I know correctly. Someone can correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure he got dropped. For him to come back with that song and blow up as hard as he did, I think that's a really powerful story for what people can do as independent artists. Like, that is made in his bedroom in Belfast, and he's charted in America, and he was in the top 40 in the UK. You know, and I think there was nothing happening in hip-hop or rap or R&B or sexy drill or whatever you want to call it when I first started the podcast like that. There was nothing. You had maybe Reggie Snow, Kojak was touring Ireland, and you had some, you know, people who had done stuff years ago. You had like Scary Area and stuff, and no one that was really cracking America in the UK like that. So this I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg here with some of the stuff that's happened this year, but to me, it's all emblematic of just this wave of talent that not only have the ability to do stuff, but can execute on such a high level. Like, that was made independently in his bedroom. Yes, he might have been working with producers that he normally works with, but that was without a label, and super, super, super impressive. So I think for me, and I think a lot of people in Belfast took a lot of pride, someone grew up there that we knew is doing this, and I don't think anybody's surprised. I think everybody knows the level he's on. And I think it just showcases that you can be from here and be at the forefront of what is pushing the culture, like that sort of Cash Cobain influence sexy drill thing that he was on. Crazy. I mean, the next thing is kind of like, you can't really talk about And without talking about CMAT at the moment, I think probably got the most cult following out of any act here at the moment. And it's for good reason. You know, such a unique personal style, such incredible, personal, recognizable songwriting. There's no one that writes songs like her. And to get nominated for the Mercury Prize, like, you know, you can talk about the Choice Prize, whatever, all these different things, but the Mercury Prize is different gravy because, for the most part, they don't fuck around when it comes to picking who's on that. It's always the best music, and for CMAT to be amongst those names is class. And again, someone with serious star power, someone that actually has staying power, someone that is influential and everybody seems to fucking love. And having those red carpet moments, you know, where chat her ass out in the red carpet, all these kind of things, just like funny and likable. And I'm glad that we have someone that's just fucking killing it at the moment like her. 2 albums in 2 years, nearly won the Choice Prize 2 years in a row. Yeah, killing it. I'm really excited to see what she does next. Just getting nominated for International Artist at the Brit Awards. I think that was alongside like Taylor Swift and stuff as well, which is fucking crazy. So yeah, and outside of that, like, you have people like Jazzy breaking records with charting, with Giving Me and stuff like that over the last year. I think I went diamond. Elsewhere, stuff I'm actually excited for. One artist that I've been seeing doing shit is Orla from Derry. Got a new album coming out. By the time this is out, the album will be out. It's called Trust in Theta, and it's got her vocals for the first time, I think, on anything. Like, I don't think she's put her vocals in anything, but to see an artist evolve from doing Boiler Rooms and being primarily a DJ to producing their own stuff to having their vocals on it, it's just really fucking cool. And they also have Soak on that. And speaking of Soak, they had a song with Fred again, which kind of blew up as well. And there's just like this undercurrent of music going on, mad runs, people doing mad things. So yeah, it's been crazy to see. Like, elsewhere, people talk about the Chamomile Garden Party this summer. Felt like something cool in amongst a lot of boring festivals. Like, a lot of festival lineups look the same, feel the same. That I couldn't go to, I was working, but felt like it had its own kind of vibe going on. And yeah, like, I guess it just gives me a lot of hope for what's going on, and it's good to recap this kind of stuff in the first episode and see where we're at. I mean, I guess we can go into what other people have been asking as well. I mean, that recap is just kind of a brief overview and kind of gives a signpost to what the vision and worldview of the podcast is, the kind of artists we're into. It's not exclusively going to be hip hop, but if you've got any questions that you want to be answered in any short form videos or you feel like would be good for an episode, drop a comment or DM us on Instagram. It's probably the best way to get it. But yeah, so we relaunched the podcast with some silly promo videos, and off the back of that, we got some questions for people. And I guess, like, the reason for those silly promo videos was kind of, you know, media is in a really difficult place, especially journalism, with when it pertains to basically anything, but music especially. I feel like a lot of publications are suffering from the same problems. It's a universal thing. It's difficult. There's not a lot of money in it. And I think what wins often is video content, and that isn't necessarily conducive to actually good long form journalism or in-depth discussions, because they're not going to translate into really viral social content. So I guess with the podcast, it's about having, you know, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour and a half long conversations with artists, digging into their stories, providing context. Like, that's the thing about journalism. I was speaking on a panel with Colm Culhane. They invited me to River Runs Round to talk about Mabfield, why I'm doing it. And kind of the core thing that I kept coming back to in journalism is providing context, because I think when stuff is driven by algorithms and TikToks that are just sounds, like, don't get me wrong, I love TikTok, I post TikToks, I think it's great for giving context if you're speaking, but if it's algorithm driven playlists on Spotify, you don't really have context for artists. You just hear the music and you don't really have a why to get attached beyond the lyrics, which, you know, you can do if you're listening to the tunes. But I think that is why journalism is important. It's to give context, it's to provide a story, and that's what I want to do with Mabfield. That's why I want to have these long form conversations, especially with the artists that aren't necessarily getting the spotlight, but that are still sick. So anyway, we're going to answer a few questions from people that have sent in. So the first one that we got is from Adam Scanlon 07. He says, who is the best Irish rapper under 5,000 monthly listeners? This one, the first one that came straight to my head was actually a Belfast artist. One of the few Belfast rappers with a good, where the Belfast accent sounds good on track, and that's Rude Teeth. He's actually based in Manchester, and he's been doing these crazy creative videos on Instagram for the longest time. And he had one on TikTok popped off, and it was like a recreation of MF Doom, of an MF Doom song where he goes back and forth with him. And I think it passed over 1 million views. And he's just a super creative dude. All his videos are really funny, really interesting. He has another one on TikTok where he samples Peep Show and raps over it. He raps over a lot of garage and stuff. I think for me, I think he's only recently put his music up on Spotify. For me, he's the best Irish rapper under 5,000 listens, no doubt. When it comes to flow, creativity, visuals, and just having a bit of crack without compromising what it means to be a good artist. For me, he's up there. And I went to see Lil Yachty with my brother about 5 months ago in Manchester. And he was there, and we hung out, and he was a good lad. So yeah, if you haven't checked him out, I think it's at Rude Teeth. Check him out. Sick rapper from Belfast, living in Manchester at the moment. Next up comes from Sean Price. And now we actually got asked a lot of questions, and I initially said I was going to answer all of these ones when I got sent them, but definitely don't have time to do that. So we'll push them on to the next one. But this one comes from Sean Price, who runs Brick Records, did an amazing job with Courtesy's album. He's working with Ahmed Love on his next one. He says, Irish albums of the year. I actually looked at that and quickly jotted some down because I had to actually think about this. For me, I'm going to include EPs in this because so many EPs came into my head when I thought of projects. The first one that I was listening to the other day, actually in the car going down to Cork, Henry Ernest, Big Blue, so fucking good. It's like this country-inspired sort of electronic pop album, I would say. I think that's maybe the best one to go with when describing it. Got this tune Wild Horses on it, absolutely slaps. Feels like it's Brockhampton meets vegan meets country. I don't know how to put it. One of my favourite projects come out of this year out of Ireland. Next one, Julie Dawson, Bottom of the Pool. New Dad's lead singer, recently dropped this. I think collaborated with Space Dimension Controller a fair bit on this, which was two people I didn't expect to see coming together. Amazing album, check it out. Elsewhere, New Dad, obviously, who she's part of. Elsewhere, Planty and Pappy, Still Healing, amazing EP. Pop, R&B, Afro, rap, all mixed into one. Yeah, 1942, the single on that, absolutely amazing. Elsewhere, Fontaine's album, I would say it is one of the best albums of this year. The highs are really high, but the lows for me, not so keen about it, but that's up there. Elsewhere, Courtesy, What Was a Question, and Slideshow, MPC, two albums that I've had in rotation, and actually Courtesy features on the Slideshow album, so that's kind of like a nice wee full circle moment. Definitely check those out. Courtesy's has been killing it the last while, and really pulling rap into interesting places. Excited to see what they both do next. Elsewhere, like, I guess Pillow Queen's album was pretty good. I listened to that. These are just off the top of my head, the ones I noted down really quickly. But yeah, those are so far my Irish albums of the year. And I think maybe even talking about what's coming next. I think further out in the year, you've got the new Reggie Snow album, which I'm really excited for. This weekend at the time of recording, Orla's album's coming out. Jar Jar Jr., who he's one of the first Irish artists I really got into years ago. He was making beats on SoundCloud, putting them up, a lot of MF Doom inspired stuff, produced a lot of Delhi Daydreams for Kojak. He's now rapping, and I've seen him in Cork at the weekend, and he's got a full album coming out this weekend as well, so make sure to check that out. Shiv, Defiance of a Sad Girl, buzzing for that. Amazing R&B artist coming out of Ireland, doing class shit. Definitely check that out when it drops. Then there's Yankee as well, also Soft Boy Records. We'll drop a couple more here, and just a reminder, if you haven't already, just make sure to like the video because it helps a ton. Yeah, so final few questions. This is kind of I was kind of hesitant to answer this one, but Slideshow, the main man, says, why is Ireland popping off right now? Celtic revival and all. Celtic revival and all. So I was thinking about this, and I'd actually done a podcast for District about a year ago, and we had listened to Graham on, stylist from Belfast, who was living in London at the time. We were kind of talking about how fashion was kind of at the center point of this fascination with Irish culture. And basically, I think there's like a lot of stuff that comes into it because, you know, I think it's impossible to ignore the pop culture side of this, where there's people like Barry Keoghan, Paul Mescal are fucking huge. You've got like Cillian Murphy being the first Irish actor to win an Oscar. You can't deny that creates some sort of novel interest from people outside of Ireland and what's going on. So that's one side of it. The other side that kind of speaks to me anyway, on like an anecdotal level, is when there's two things going on. There's been a ton of iconic Irish artists that have died in the past few years. Sinead O'Connor, Shane MacGowan, loads. And they all used their voices to talk about things that mattered. And I think when they passed away, people really felt the gravity of what they have done. And we're living in really difficult times in Ireland where we don't feel like the government's representing us. And I do feel like artists are stepping up and speaking for people. You've got the likes of Lankum, who've been very vocal about what's going on in Palestine. Kojak and Fontaines that are talking about what it's like to immigrate, why they're having to leave Ireland. And the thing is, a lot of these artists are living in London or elsewhere. And the thing that comes with that is people don't want to leave a lot of the time. They have to, because there's not the opportunities, and the country's being run into the ground and they're having to go further afield. This isn't a new thing. But if you move away, everybody knows a crack. People go away and they wear being Irish on their sleeve. That's part of it. And that's not a new thing. But I think when you have that, you have the internet, you have this pop culture interest, and you have like all these things coalescing at once. I think it does create this kind of like pride in being Irish and wanting to support these artists who, for one, are making incredible music on a world stage that compete with anyone. Like Lankum are making folk music that's internationally renowned. It's on Pitchfork. It's being rated so highly. So when you have all that, all coalescing at once, I think it does create this like pride and desire to have this sort of like heritage in your music, or whatever you want to call it, having Irish symbolism, harken back to some of the heroes that we had before us. Because if you're making art, if you're doing anything creative in Ireland, like it's likely you'll get slagged by your mates at the start. And I think that's kind of the thing. We don't let people go off to London and get too big for their boots. We keep people grounded, and there's an authenticity then that comes through with that, alongside all these other factors of talking about. And together, I think that's kind of what put us together. So yeah, that's kind of my like rambly thing about why there's kind of the Celtic revival or Celtic revival. I think all of those things come together, and there's just a pride in being Irish and what it stands for. It's being vocal about oppression, about colonialism, about what's going on, housing, anything like that. And we all look up to these artists who are doing a lot of that talking. So I guess like after that long rambly answer, we can call it a day. This is just a short episode to introduce the podcast series. The next episode is with a guest I've been waiting to get on for ages. So make sure you stay in touch. Make sure you stay tuned in. Hit the subscribe button if you hadn't. Follow us on all socials and drop a comment if you enjoyed it. If there's anybody else you want to see, leave a comment. And yeah, this has been D-Murph, Mabfield, episode 1, new series. Happy to be back. Peace.